For more on this, let's bring in Michael Starr, Hopkins, and Joseph Pinion. Michael is a Democratic strategist who has served on the presidential campaigns of Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and John Delaney. And Joseph is a Republican strategist and founder of Pinion Enterprises. Welcome to both of you. Michael, let me start with you. In past debates, negative comments have ended up hurting candidates like Senator Kamala Harris. Do you think that going after Senator Warren could hurt people like Senator Klobuchar or Mayor Buttigieg? Or is going after Joe Biden different?
I actually do think it's going to hurt Democrats. I think there's a worry right now within the party that kind of crossfire is going to drive up the negatives on candidates and make it harder for them in a general election should they become the nominee. And so I think what you're seeing right now is an electorate that almost is punishing candidates who decide to go negative. And so I think Amy Klobuchar, I think Pete Buttigieg, I think their performance last night may have given them a little bit of notoriety, may have given them a bump in media, but I don't think they'll see a bump from voters that'll last.
Joseph, new CBS News polling found that 42% of Americans think President Trump's assertions about Joe Biden, his son, and Ukraine are deserving of further investigation. From what you saw, do you think that Joe Biden did enough to address those questions?
Look, I don't think that they've done nearly enough to address his assertions. I think also, really it was tantamount to, political malpractice. The fact that they would have this interview coming out with Hunter Biden on the day of the actual debate. I think it really set a bad precedent, set a bad tone for the day. I think that the vice president ended up actually struggling because of that, because again, he ends up starting the day once again on the defensive instead of being able to actually come out there and set the agenda for what he wants to talk about.
Well, this was also, as we were just talking about a moment ago, Senator Bernie Sanders' first high-profile event following that heart attack that he suffered 2 weeks ago. Let's go ahead and listen to how the senator addressed that topic.
You're 78 years old and you just had a heart attack. How do you reassure Democratic voters that you're up to the stress of the presidency?
Well, let me invite you all to a major rally we're having in Queens, New York, BernieSanders.com. We're going to have a special guest at that event, and we are going to be mounting a vigorous campaign all over this country. That is how I think I can reassure the American people. But let me take this moment, if I might, to thank so many people from all over this country, including many of my colleagues up here, for their love, for their prayers, for their well wishes.
So, Michael, from your viewpoint, did Senator Sanders put those questions about age and health to rest?
Well, let me first say, I think there's a difference between concerns about age and concerns about health. I don't think it really matters how old a candidate is, but I think it matters what their health is. And so I think when it comes to Senator Sanders, you're now looking at 2 years to go forward campaigning and then 4 years in the White House. And with someone already having a heart attack, I think that there are going to be questions throughout this primary and potentially the general election about his health. And what we saw in 2016 was those kind of questions hurt Hillary Clinton and kind of put an asterisk next to her campaign. And so I think what you're going to see from Senator Sanders is anytime he cancels an event, anytime he sneezes, anytime he coughs, it's all going to be about his health. And so I think over time, that'll just knock his poll number down.
Does that have the potential? I'm just curious, Joseph, if you think, when you ask questions about this on one side, President Trump is also in his 70s as well. Does that also then raise questions potentially on the Republican side?
Oh, look, I think that, to be clear, I think that to my counterpoint's point that you have an individual who was 78 years old. I think there are already going to be some lingering concerns. I think realistically, the concerns that people have with President Trump are much different than his health. I think with Bernie Sanders, the greatest problem that he faces and the Democrats face is the fact that he has the money, the backing to be able to go as long as he wants. That makes it very difficult for any of the other Democrats in that field trying to move up to try to get past him on the way to try to enter that top tier status. So I think that, realistically, his chances of being the nominee, end of the day, he had to check into that hospital. Obviously, we're very happy that he's doing better, and I think that he will run a vigorous campaign. But I think that the bigger problem that Democrats are going to face is that he's going to take up so much oxygen in the room that it makes it very difficult to have the type of debate that we saw yesterday between, a strong moderate like Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren trying to make that a progressive agenda.
Let's talk about some fundraising numbers here. We finally learned the official numbers for the third quarter fundraising from the campaign. So when you look at this list, Joe Biden is fifth when it comes to cash on hand. So, Joseph, what does that signal to you at this point in the contest?
Look, he's running out of steam. I mean, realistically, I mean, we know that money is viability. The reason that Joe Biden was the front runner prohibitively was because he had the most money and he had the most name ID. Well, all of a sudden, the name ID is starting to even out and the money is starting to disappear. And I think that if you look at what has always been the trend heading into the backstretch of a presidential campaign going into Iowa, it's really been about saying who has the money to continue to lay down that foundation to have the infrastructure they need. And if they don't have the money to continue to have that caucus infrastructure in place, Iowa's going to be a very difficult thing for him to win.
Yeah, and Michael, I want to get you on this too, because when you look at this, he comes in at 9 million behind Senator Kamala Harris, who had 10.5 million. What are your thoughts on these numbers from Joe Biden's campaign?
Well, I think it shows that his donors are nervous about where his campaign's headed. You know, between the questions about whether he's fit to run a campaign and then the questions about Hunter Biden and how he'd run the White House, I think donors are expectedly asking questions about whether his campaign's going to be viable. And so I think that that's turning into a lack of a donor base. And so I think moving forward, he's going to have to be able to show his donors that he's running a strong campaign. And if he can't, then that money's going to go somewhere else.
All right, getting down to the wire here. Michael, Starr, Hopkins, and Joseph Pinion, thanks to you both for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.